Hello, I'm Dr. Bridget Nash, and I'd like to welcome you to The Therapy Show, a podcast series that seeks to demystify mental health treatment. Today, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Dexter-Mazza and Dr. James Mazza, who are here to discuss the topic of how to use dialectical behavior therapy in a school setting. They're the founders of the company DBT in Schools and creators of a curriculum called DBT STEPS-A. The acronym STEPS-A stands for Skills Training for Emotional Problem Solving for Adolescents. They are currently in the process of developing DBT STEPS-E for children in elementary school. I would like to start by asking both of you about your personal and professional backgrounds that led to your interest in bringing DBT to schools.
Well, I'm a school psychologist by training, so I work at the University of Washington in the school psychology program, and I wanted to bring mental health skills and use a prevention lens so that we could help kids learn how to provide their own strategies that would be effective for them in dealing with their adolescent life that was going on.
And I'm a clinical psychologist by training and trained in dialectical behavior therapy that I've been providing for 20 years to adolescents, adults, and families. And over time of working with all of these different families, realizing that I was only able to treat a very small number of individuals once they were really struggling in their lives. And so many clients would say to me at the end of treatment, how come I never learned these skills in schools? How come I never learned this? I could have not gotten into this really difficult place had I learned these skills earlier. So that's when Jim and I started really talking about how do we move upstream and start thinking about bringing these skills as a part of prevention for mental health problems rather than an intervention to only those who are struggling.
So how have you modified the principles of DBT to be effective for children and adolescents in a school setting?
So one of the main things that we've done in our school setting with our social emotional learning curriculum is that we've really looked at the skills component of dialectical behavior therapy. DBT is a very large comprehensive treatment that includes individual therapy and consultation team and skills coaching and skills group. And we've taken the skills component and really moved that into how do we teach these skills to students as a part of general education to focus on emotional wellness and resilience. That's the main part of what we do at DBT in Schools, of teaching the social emotional learning curriculum and then working with school mental health staff on how to coach students in the active use and support of the skills they're learning in their classrooms. So we've taken out the comprehensive DBT treatment part in our initial piece. Now, with that, I also want to say we also work with some schools who do want to go all in and also provide comprehensive school-based DBT as a counseling model or treatment model within the school setting. So it kind of hits the whole continuum.
That's really important. During the child and adolescent stage of development, there are so many changes, both physically and mentally, which can lead to distressing thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Can you explain what is going on in the brain during this critical developmental period that makes learning DBT skills so important?
As kids develop from elementary school into middle school, their brains are starting to focus on more abstract reasoning, meaning that they're starting to relate to others, starting to figure out relationships to peers, and they're starting to be aware of how they're being evaluated by others, what they might look like to others, and taking a different perspective. And so that hyper-awareness is part of that adolescent development. And so we call that the kind of that imaginary stage that's there. And they think that everybody's kind of looking at them, looking at how they're dressed, looking at what they say and so forth. And so that piece becomes important for developing the strategies, because the adolescents that are wanting to make more established relationships and independent relationships with their peers while also trying to rely on their parents a little bit less. So there's kind of this push and pull that happens regarding the significant relationships in their lives where the peers are becoming more and more important and the parents less so.
DBT is fundamentally a very structured and programmatic type of therapy intervention, as you mentioned before. How do you make it work in a school setting?
So multiple ways. And the first part is looking at, in our DBT Skills in Schools curriculum, again, we're focusing on just teaching the students the skills of DBT. We're teaching them mindfulness skills and emotion regulation skills and relationship skills and behavior regulation skills so that they don't have as many impulsive or problematic behaviors. And so we do that by teaching the skills as part of their general education academic coursework. In many schools, they're teaching it as part of a wellness class or their health and PE class or part of an advisory class. And then we have some schools who are moving it right into their social studies and language arts class. Math and science teachers are teaching them. So as part of a course, we're not doing the therapy in the school. We're teaching the skills to make the students more effective, and really kind of helping the schools focus on educating the whole child is a big part of it. The other place that we're working in the school setting is by teaching the school counselors and school mental health staff, school psychologists, school social workers, how to use some of the principles of DBT to guide their counseling sessions towards coaching and supporting the students that they're working with in using their DBT STEPS-A skills.
And can you give a quick overview of DBT skills? I think there's 4 modules, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so there are 4 modules. 2 modules are on that acceptance validation side. They're called mindfulness and distress tolerance skills. And then there are 2 modules that are on the change side, and that's emotion regulation skills and interpersonal effectiveness skills.
And we really focus in each of those areas, like mindfulness skills are helping the students to really be able to, one, put their attention where they want it to be, to how do they focus and be more in this moment rather than in the past or in the future, which can be very helpful in a school-based setting when there's lots of things going on around them in the moment. And then also really helping students to just kind of be aware of what's happening inside of them and outside of them. And one of the concepts that we teach as part of DBT skills is this concept of how do you access your wise mind, where you can be focused and not acting solely from your emotion mind, when you don't have your emotions running the show, and teaching students to be kind of less judgmental in their language and their thoughts with themselves and with other people as a way of more effectively regulating their emotions. And then with the distress tolerance skills and the emotion regulation skills, we dive even deeper into specific strategies that students can use when managing their own emotions, their own behaviors, and in all their relationships with peers and adults in their environment.
Who are skills training programs most effective for? Is it geared towards students who already have a DSM-5 diagnosis, or for students who may be at risk for having a DSM-5 diagnosis?
So the DBT STEPS-A curriculum is actually focused on the general education, all students. Outpatient DBT is really focused on individuals, adolescents, and adults who have some kind of DSM diagnosis. And we really are moving upstream. Let's teach these skills to all students before they're struggling. And so we have students on a multi-tiered system of support model for schools at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, all receiving a course on the DBT skills. So really focusing on gen ed, all students, not just those who are struggling. And those who are struggling still benefit from the skills.
So there's real advantages to teaching students who don't have a diagnosis to avoid the mental distress that may come along with having a diagnosis in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And it also avoids the stigma that's associated with mental illness right now as well. And so the idea is to help kids establish skills while there's not a lot going on, because we know during adolescent times, especially, that there's going to be drama that happens. The kids are going to experience some things that they struggle with. And so that's just kind of that stage of independence. And so if we can establish a toolbox that's individualized for them by having them practice some of the skills and giving them coaching, then those tools are available when there are some struggles that happen, when there are some uncomfortabilities in that adolescent stage due to substance use or being asked to use, dating, intimacy, all sorts of issues about fitting in, social media as well. And so having those tools established already and working on them being effective becomes important for all of our students.
This emotional dysregulation that may lead to suicidal thoughts, is that addressed in your program?
Actually, that's my core research is in suicidal behavior amongst adolescents. What we want to do, though, is not only focus on suicide. We think it's a broader picture. One of the main components of suicidal behavior that drives that behavior is emotional dysregulation. And so what we want to do is then have a program that we knew was very effective with suicidal behavior and emotional dysregulation. And that program is DBT. And we took the components of the skills that we know are the acquisition piece, the strategies that patients or students can use during those situations where their emotional dysregulation is starting to get higher and higher.
And one of the things that makes DBT STEPS-A different from outpatient DBT, and that in outpatient DBT in a clinical setting, we often are talking about life-threatening behaviors like suicidal behavior and self-injury in that way in our individual therapy sessions and in more general ways in the DBT skills groups. In a school-based setting, one of the things that we do is we talk about all different problems that students have, from being able to focus and struggling with academics to relationship problems with peers to high emotions when on the football field or the basketball court or during a debate session. What skills can they use to help regulate their emotions in all of those everyday scenarios, while also the teachers provide other examples of around maybe urges to hurt themselves, suicidal thoughts, substance use as kind of general categories without speaking about any one specific student or having students talk about their individual experiences in the classroom setting. Because one of the things that happens is many teachers get nervous of, I can't teach this social emotional learning class. I'm not trained in mental health. And we specifically design the lessons that any caring adult could teach the skills to the students. And you didn't have to have a training in mental health or a mental health background in order to teach the skills as part of your class in schools.
For a parent who's listening, can you explain the benefits their child or adolescent would receive if the STEPS-A and STEPS-E curriculum were implemented in their school?
Absolutely. For us, that's one of the reasons we started this. We really wanted to move upstream as a prevention approach so all kids learn these skills. In all my years of therapy, I've heard over and over that some kids learn these skills along the way, some don't. The only way to actually learn these skills typically in the past is either because you're a mental health therapist who gets trained in DBT, or you're a DBT client who's struggling so much that needs this big comprehensive outpatient treatment. And we really wanted these skills we know are effective for everybody. They're problem-solving skills, they're coping skills that all of us need. And if we could get them to the students earlier, then they'd be more effective and don't have to wait to have problems later on. And I think parents really can find benefit in these skills because it helps just build that overall emotional resilience that we're hoping for our kids to have these days. I often think about when I was younger, if I engaged in some problematic behavior or had some emotional situation, I usually had a couple of days to process through it. If it happened on a Friday or Saturday, I could figure it out over Sunday and be ready to return to school on Monday. In this world, this technology, digital age we live in now, somebody engages in a problematic behavior or has an emotional situation occur, within the next 30 seconds, it's often out on social media. And that problem-solving ability, we don't have the time to learn them and practice. So we want our kids to get the skills learned formally so they can use them day in and day out now.
Yeah, and I would add that when we've talked to parents, they also believe that they can use some of these same skills. And so it provides a common language in which the parents and the kids can talk to each other and work on those skills. And we often in our trainings will point out times that we have difficulties in trying to communicate to our kids. And if we've got that same language, then it'll be helpful that we know what those things are. And if we, the adult, has some type of emotion that got too high or somewhere we wish we would have made a better decision, we show that vulnerability. We talk to our kids about it. We model that in our trainings as well, that it's important that our kids see that we also need some of these same types of skills, that these aren't just adolescent skills or middle school skills. These are skills that everybody can use.
Can you share a success story where bringing STEPS-A into a school system made a significant impact on the lives of students? And I'm also thinking there may be a secondary gain for teachers and administrators as well.
Yeah, we've heard from numerous schools in upstate New York that we've been working with where the teachers have really said that the skills themselves have been helpful in their relationships and in their working with the students. The students have communicated to the teachers that they really find this class to be valuable and that it's helping them, especially some of the mindfulness skills, to slow down in making decisions and to think about what the outcomes might be before they actually make that decision. And then several of the skills that are used when distress is really strong, when the person's in emotion mind, where the emotions are making all the decisions, which often turns out to be problematic. that they've been able to use some of these skills to get back into that wise mind spot, to be more thoughtful about their decisions, and to make sure that they're making decisions that align with their long-term goals and values.
I'll also say that especially during this pandemic, since March, when many of our schools moved into remote learning, we've heard from several of our schools that having already been teaching the skills prior to that, many of their students had some foundational baseline to manage the difficulties and the changes and the frustrations and all the emotions that came in with not only having to move to remote school, but the isolation with a lot of their students has been really helpful to them, that they have a common language, that they can talk about emotions and come up with strategies to deal with the aftermath and the experience of the current pandemic.
What are the most common obstacles you have experienced in trying to implement the STEPS programs in schools? I assume there are unique challenges for children and adolescents.
A few of the obstacles are administrative buy-in. So we need the principals and the vice principals, superintendents to be on board with wanting to teach a social emotional learning curriculum that is foundationally based on evidence-based programs. Another one is finding teachers that are willing to teach the STEPS-E program. Although, we do find a lot of teachers willing to do this. It's trying to free up their schedule so they can actually teach this and not teach language arts or not teach the science course that they're normally assigned.
I'd say a big piece is getting administrator buy-in to understand that they need to make space for social emotional learning in the academic calendar. Many will have sometimes school mental health staff come to trainings and say, this is fantastic, our students need it, but I don't have a class. And so I don't know where I'm going to be able to teach this to students, or I'm only given 5 sessions I'm allowed to meet with students during the year. So we really need administrators to recognize the importance of educating the whole child and then helping pave the way and the time in the academic calendar to fit the social emotional learning curriculums into the student schedules.
I also think supporting the teachers that are doing this for the first time, they often feel like this is awkward and wonky at times. And so just providing them with support to say, yes, this is how it's going to be. It's the first time you're doing it. There's a learning curve that's here. Those that have been teaching it for 2 or more years really start to hit their stride and really feel like the skills are effective with their students now and that they're obtaining those skills, and that the teachers are also using those skills throughout their classrooms, whether that's the STEPS-A class or whether that's language arts, and that they're also using it in their regular lives outside of school as well.
So you mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic and that many students are learning from home. They're also experiencing multiple stressors, and even students who did not have mental distress are now dealing with disruption in their normal lives. How can the STEPS programs be utilized by students who are currently attending school virtually?
So there's a couple pieces here. I think one of the things that has come out of the pandemic is that schools, parents, everybody's recognizing that now more than ever, social emotional learning and emotion regulation skills are critical for both children, adolescents, and adults. And so we are having more and more schools reach out to us for training and implementation in their schools, virtually and in person if they're going back in person. And so the beauty of the STEPS-A class is that it can move very easily into a virtual classroom as well. And we have lots of examples of what we're all dealing with today, that the students are finding benefit in learning the skills still. Especially now recognizing that many of the students are having some mental distress and they're looking for coping strategies. And so that's exactly why I think whether you were teaching STEPS-A before the pandemic started, or if you start teaching it during, it's beneficial to our students in schools across the board.
Yeah, we're hearing quite a bit across the country of students who are not participating as much, have their cameras off. The grades are slipping from a lot of students. We've got some students that are very non-engaged. And so there's been some increased worry about the anxiety that a lot of these students are now starting to feel. And then some of the separation and isolation, as Liz just talked about. And so the idea of being able to teach social emotional learning and teach about emotion regulations and teach about skills that can help address your anxiety is getting stronger and stronger right now. And so I think the need is growing as this pandemic has been into its 9th month.
And so you're using technology actually in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is where the students are at as well, and how they communicate is through some of this technology. So we're trying to meet them where they are.
So is there a component where parents are involved in the STEPS-A program? I know you have the student, you have the school. Is there a component for parents?
So some schools will run parent seminars once a quarter or once a month in the evenings, where they're introducing and providing information to the parents about what skills their students are learning. So some are doing that. One of the ways that Jim and I have been helping to educate parents is that starting in March, shortly after we all went into lockdown and the start of the pandemic, we started doing a parenting live stream on Instagram and Facebook 3 mornings a week called Parenting Through COVID-19 and Beyond, where we actually teach the skills from STEPS-A to parents and educators over live stream 3 mornings a week. And we've been doing that now since the end of March.
That's incredible. So we talk about mindfulness in DBT and we talk about distress tolerance. I think the interpersonal effectiveness skill is really amazing because it teaches the child that they can win in some of these adult relationships where in the past they may have felt very powerless. I just think that one should really be highlighted here.
Yeah, absolutely. They're huge skills. We actually were just teaching this week in our parenting live stream, the interpersonal effectiveness skills and with Dear Man skills specifically on how do you ask effectively for things you want and how do you say no effectively for things you don't want. And we have 3 kids ourselves we have 2 middle schoolers and an elementary school student who they're like our practice ground and learn all the skills and then practice them with us. And it's been very effective to watch even our 8-year-old daughter learn the Dear Man skill and then watch her teach it to her classmates so that they're all more effectively asking for things. And the things they're asking for are like, can we have a play date? Can we have a sleepover? Can we stay later at each other's houses or things like that? But they're learning how to use those skills strategically and effectively at an early age, which I hopefully will be more effective for them as they grow, because we could all be more effective at our interpersonal skills.
And what is Dear Man?
So the Dear Man skill is how we ask for things more effectively and focusing primarily on the D, the E, the A, and R. It means the D is to describe the situation that you're in right now. Express is the E for express how you feel or your opinion. A is to ask or assert yourself. And the R is to reward or reinforce the person ahead of time for giving you what you want or saying no. And so it could be very brief, very direct on that and short. Like one example of a Dear Man that our daughter used on Jim last summer when we were on a vacation and he was fishing and enjoying some quiet time and she wanted to go to the beach and play with a bunch of the other kids. She had to ask him, and I coached her on how to do a Dear Man, and she walked up to her dad and said, "Dad, the other kids are playing Can Jam on the beach right now. I would really love to play. Would you go with me to play? And we'll have a really good time and we'll make a memory." So the D was the other kids are playing. The E was I would really love to play. It'd make me happy. The A was will you go play with me? And the reward was and we'll make a memory, which is a huge reinforcer. And it was 30 seconds and I was able to teach it to her and she can walk through those steps. And I think those are some of the key strategies we're trying to teach our kids. And as we teach to parents also in our live streams.
Yeah, I think the interpersonal effectiveness skills are becoming more and more important as well because our adolescents, middle schoolers, probably even late elementary schools students are starting to communicate a lot through text messages. And so they're not learning some of the interpersonal skills that we did as kids about looking somebody in the eye, asking confidently, and appearing confident as well. And so it just seems to me that those skills are needing some polishing and some acquiring from some of our students. Otherwise, they have 3 conversations going on through a group chat and it's difficult to follow.
And those skills are transferable when they grow up, they go to college working with professors, or if they go into the workforce. These are skills that they can build on over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think all of the DBT skills they can build on, and especially these as well.
So what are you both most excited about in mental health treatment today?
For me as a school psychologist who's working on trying to be way upstream and prevent some of these kiddos from experiencing some of the mental health issues that they do or are getting in more risky behaviors, I'm excited about the prevention side, trying to help these kids build a set of tools that they can use to promote themselves rather than having to intervene. And so trying to have less kids that are in that mental health system, less kids who are self-medicating, less kids who are self-harming is something that I'm excited about.
And for me, it's really not specifically about mental health treatment, but really about the understanding of the importance of mental wellness and emotional resilience that through the media, because of the pandemic, I think more and more people are aware of now as a critical component of education and having conversations in families about emotions now more than ever has been happening.
And it seems like it's almost like an antidote against all of the negative effects of technology and media. This could be like a positive, not treatment, but just coping skill.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the amount of time that our students, even the adults, are spending on screens now, just kind of noticing that urge to check every text that comes in, the amount of time that you're on there, and just noticing of what that is, and then using a skill to do something that's different.
Yeah, and I think the other piece that makes me really excited about the DBT STEPS-A curriculum and the focus of schools on social emotional learning is that mental health treatment is very expensive and not available for everybody in an equitable way around the country or around the world, either because there's not always evidence-based treatment providers in certain areas, or even for like DBT isn't a very effective evidence-based treatment. It's also a very expensive treatment, and it's not available in a lot of areas throughout the country.
So this really levels the playing field.
That is our hope.
And it also gives the kids, and with the development of STEPS-A, it gives our kids and teachers and parents a common language to talk about their emotions from 5 years old all the way through college. And so we now have an ability to talk about emotions and talk about different skills that have specificity to them on how to intervene and how to provide resilience for themselves.
So if you had a magic wand and could improve one thing about mental health treatment today, what would it be?
I would want mental health treatment or skills to be central to every educational setting that we have.
Yeah, same thing, that for mental health treatment, that every school would be able to provide not only school-based mental health, but also an active social emotional learning course that holds the same level of importance as social studies, language arts, math, science, equally important.
So how can my audience learn more about your work, either online or in print? And how can they bring your work to their school system?
Yes. Well, thank you for asking that. Well, first and foremost, you can always go to our website, which is dbtinschools.com, where we have a variety of information about the curriculums and the trainings that we provide. We provide trainings to schools all over the world about how to implement and teach the curriculum to students. You can also find us on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We do our parenting through COVID-19 and beyond live stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time. So you could watch us live or watch all of the recordings are available there. And then how to bring it to your school, go to the website, go through the contact us button, email us, come and attend a training. One of the things that has happened to be effective from the pandemic is that all of our trainings have moved to virtual interactive live trainings that we're now able to actually access and provide training to many more schools around the world than we were prior, when all of our trainings were in person and required a lot of travel and our limited ability to do that. So we've got 2 big trainings coming up in January that people can register for if they want to attend that, or we have more coming out through the year. So we'd love just for people to reach out to us and talk to us about training and opportunities for your schools, and for parents to come and hang out with us on social media.
I love it. So Drs. Dexter-Mazza and Dr. Mazza, on behalf of myself, my listeners, and all of the people that you've helped through your work, I want to thank you for your contributions to mental health treatment and for taking the time out of your busy schedule to help me and my audience better understand the importance of bringing DBT skills to our school settings.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. This was a great conversation. We enjoyed being here.
I did too. So be sure to check out my website, therapyshow.com, which has many resources about mental health. There you will also find how to submit questions, stories, or insights that you have about the mental health system, or suggestions about who else I can interview and how I can improve the show. I'd like to close by reminding our listeners to please subscribe, share, and review this podcast so you, someone you love, and people around the world can gain more benefit from therapy. There's no need to suffer in silence. Get the help that you need to create the life that you want.